Every Batman needs a Robin, and today we're going to be dropping Deuces. Who are the best Robins that we've ever seen, or at least that I've seen? This is episode 17 of the Royal City Hoops podcast. We're going to be looking at the all-time second bananas on my list and this is going to be a list of only guys that I've seen. This isn't going to be a comprehensive list of everyone ever, because, Paul Arizin and Jerry West, I never saw them play. So we're going to kind of keep it simple. It's very interesting because you see in some of these lists, or I've read the Bleacher Report list, they're talking about all-time duos from eras, all that kind of stuff. And it just, is it something for subscriber number 4 who wanted me to shout him out? Here you go, Quan. Now, first and foremost, I was kind of getting bored of doing the rebuilding teams. It was getting a little stale, and I thought I'd do something else. So we're going to do what the kids call spitting hot fire on the mic. And I'm going to do that. And we're just going to do it off the cuff. So we'll probably start with some of the early ones. Some of these are kind of complicated. I mean, there's a few players where they had second bananas or Robins or, the number 2 who, they're not all-timers. Like if you look at the Spurs, who are you picking as the number 2? Like David Robinson, he was kind of on the decline when Tim Duncan was there. Is it going to be Tony Parker? Or is it going to be Manu Ginobili? I don't know. And then on the other side of that, you have the Warriors. You have a team full of all-stars. Who's the number 2 guy there? Steph and KD, who's going to be your number 2? I mean, a lot of people are going to lean to KD being the number 1, but I think on that team, Steph Curry was the lifeblood. He's the heart, like the beating heart, the character of them. The easygoing, never get flustered, having fun, playing hard kind of thing. So that's another one where you're kind of caught, right? Who are you going to pick? And then there's other teams that you see, like sort of the transition where Batman becomes Robin and Robin becomes Alfred. And that would kind of be, that's Kareem, Magic, and James Worthy, over time, how that all evolved. So, but let's stop rambling and get to the list. So let's start with Kevin Mchale. He's on my list of all-time great number 2s. If you never saw Kevin Mchale, which is probably pretty normal, it's, not a lot of people watched as much basketball as I did in the 80s and 90s. Kevin Mchale was a surgeon on the block. People will talk about Elijah One's footwork and all of that. Kevin Mchale was the precursor. Everything. He said it all with a jump hook. His jump hook going both shoulders, devastating. And he set up all his moves with that. He had the spin fade. He had the up and under. He had the hook, the flip. Everything. He tortured guys. And that gave Bird space to operate. Again, the Celtics had 3 Hall of Famers. No, Danny Ainge isn't a Hall of Famer. Maybe as a GM he will be. But Robert Parish, another Hall of Famer. And the way the game was played then, Kevin Mchale, he just a total stud. If you want to learn how to post up, Kevin Mchale and Hakeem Olajuwon are the book. Everybody bases their stuff on them. They're the tops. We're going to keep in that era. We're going to move over to the Lakers. And this is where it gets interesting. We talked about Batman, Robin, and Alfred. So when the Lakers dynasty started with Magic, for sure Kareem was Batman. For sure. Magic was Robin. As the era moved on, then it became Magic was Batman, Kareem was Robin. And then later it became Magic was Batman, James Worthy was Robin, and Kareem was Alfred. Because, he played until he was 40. He was averaging like 8 points a game. You're not going to put him as your second best player. So, all 3 of those guys should be on the list of all-time Robins. James Worthy, you don't get the nickname Big Game James for no reason. Every big game, he played well. I just remember making buckets, getting rebounds. He's 6'9", athletic. Back then, as your wing, there's some James Worthy dunks. While they're not, super acrobatic, his athleticism, he would streak down and take off from 12 feet away just a sweeping one-hand dunk. You know, he would be very impressive. If you're going to study old school players, he's one I think that doesn't get enough pub going back. The next on my list is probably one of my favorites, and it's going to be Joe Dumars. Bleacher Report. We're basing this on Bleacher Report's, all-time 50 greatest duos. And this is sheer bias on my part. And Joe Dumars was one of the best two-way players ever. Michael Jordan rates him as the hardest guy who ever played him, like defensively. He also averaged 20 points a game for a big chunk of his career. He was an NBA Finals MVP. He was a big part of those Pistons teams. Very quiet, soft-spoken. But he complimented Isaiah Thomas, who, again, never gets enough of his due about how good he was. There's a lot of hate going around him right now. We got The Last Dance going on. Full disclosure, I have not watched any of The Last Dance at this point, and I think we're heading into episodes 7 and 8. That's because I'm a binge watcher. I'm just gonna basically take 2 days and ruin my life and watch the whole thing because I can't do it any other way. Now, Joe Dumars definitely on my list. Just super underrated. I mean, later on when Grant Hill came in to the Pistons, he was the second banana there too, and played a mentor in that role. So I didn't even think about that in my notes I got here on the board. He was tremendous. Another undersold player, but in the era of basketball now, watching it then, you don't really get a context of how good he was, the nuances. I mean, back then there was no League Pass, there was no ESPN here in Canada. I watched every game I could, and you were only getting a handful of teams, and you're getting the playoff teams. Back then the Pistons were good, so you were getting a lot of Pistons games, and I'm on the East Coast. Knicks, Pistons, Bulls, Celtics. You're getting all the East Coast games. So that was great. I got to see a lot of that. So Joe Dumars, really high on my list. We're going to Stockton and Malone. So here's the fun thing about Stockton and Malone that's part of this discussion is who's the number 2 there? And to a lesser degree in that same era, you have Gary Payton and Sean Kemp, who I think don't get enough due as being a really, really good duo. But who's the number 2 there? Is it GP because he's not getting the buckets and making all the crazy dunks? Is it Kemp because Payton sets the tables and scores? Like, who's the number 2 there? And with Stockton Malone, who's the number 2 there? You have the all-time leader in assists and steals, and you have second all-time in points. Who do you pick as the second banana? I think everybody tends to lean towards the guy who doesn't score the points. So you're probably going to put Stockton in that category. So he's super high on the list. It's hard to separate in that instance as a basketball. I like basketball. I like certain players, but basketball. I'll watch whatever's on, whatever team. With League Pass, I am watching teams that I cannot see at any other time. Karl Anthony Towns' rookie year was all about watching the Timberwolves. Luka, his rookie year, I couldn't get enough of watching Luka. Just the Spurs, seeing the Clippers before they got Kawhi and Paul George. I really like the way Doc Rivers coaches. I like seeing that. I would have liked to have seen more Donovan Mitchell and that stuff because people talk highly of him going forward, but I just don't have enough context to figure out how good he is yet. We have other guys in this list, so I don't know where to put Michael and Scotty. Do I leave this to the end? Do I talk about it now because it's the timeline? So let's talk about it now. Scottie Pippen is probably the all-time greatest second banana ever. And like I said, I watched a ton of basketball in that era. That was probably the prime time of me watching basketball. I was, we're going to say 14 to 22. And that was the prime. And I think it's very topical because it's The Last Dance and Scottie Pippen has been discussed. It's really missed how good he was. And it's hard to say that given how much respect he gets. He's still in the media. You're still seeing him. He was unreal. And even though as he got older and his body started to betray him, his years with Portland, he had a huge impact there. You could see when he was on the floor they were better, but he couldn't stay healthy. One thing about those old school players, the idea then was to be extra muscular. So they would bulk up and it would destroy their knees because they'd be top heavy. You know, Scottie Pippen didn't look like a big guy. He was 250. And you look at today's basketball, we're going to talk about Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and all these positionless players that are 6'8", that can post up and defend. Those guys, Scottie Pippen is the prototype. And to me, he's still better than all those guys. If you're going to put it, now they shoot more threes and it's fancier. You put Scottie Pippen in today's basketball, he explodes. You know, I put him ahead of Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. I think the Kawhi Leonard hype train is a little too overdone. Yes, he's very good. But, you know, at one point last year, somebody was like, is he, you know, the next Michael Jordan? Is he the closest thing? And I'm like, it's 1 year, man. He's really good. Yeah, he's amazing. It's 1 year. And let's see him do it over, you know, extended period. So we'll see how that plays out. But Scottie Pippen, his years with the Rockets, I mean, all this stuff. He was so good. The year Jordan was out, that full year, you know, the year that he sat out when Tony Kukoc hit that big shot to win the game when Phil Jackson decided to send a message, you know. He was unreal. There was a point where he was probably the second best player in the world and also the second best player on his team. That's insane. So now that's spoiler alert. I mean, he's the best. Let's talk about who number 2 is probably the best. And it's going to be Dwayne Wade. So, well, let's save Dwayne Wade. So let's talk about, we talked earlier about the Lakers, we talked about Batman, Robin, Alfred. Well, we're not going to talk about, there's no Alfred in this equation. But we're going to talk about Shaq and Kobe and then Pau Gasol. So Kobe, when Shaq was a monster, Kobe was the number 2. And what was so impressive to me when they made that run to win all those rings, those 3 rings, he really shaped his game to take over all the other aspects, and Shaq dominated the interior. He figured it out. So he's I don't know, maybe he is my number 2 on this list as the second banana. It's pretty amazing how amazingly he complimented Shaq. And Shaq's on this list a few times as Batman. So he was tremendous to figure out, how do I play around this dominant figure? And yeah, sure, they had their drama and all that. But he was pretty amazing. And then he eventually becomes Batman. And he's got a great Robin in Pau Gasol. I think it's really, not unfortunate. I can't overuse that word. Pau Gasol is super underrated on how good he is. His basketball IQ, if you watched him with Spain, if you watched him with the Grizzlies, I got to see him live against the Raptors when the Lakers were super good. And I remember watching him play Chris Bosh, and he at one point, I think there's 3 plays that stick out in my mind. 2 of them are, there's a defensive rebound by the Lakers, and in both possessions, Powell starts jogging a little bit, and he looks over his shoulder, and he notices Bosh isn't running, that Bosh is standing straight up, and you see him just put it in gear. And to me, that little nuance of going, oh, you're not running? I'm going to go get 2. And he goes and gets a layup both times. Those little things separate guys. I remember the rap on Powell was that he was soft. In that same game, I'm watching Pau Gasol. So remember, he's 7 feet, super long arms, but narrow. So he doesn't look that rangy. And there's rebounds going up, and guys are just hammering him. His body is just taking a beating. But he doesn't even notice. He's just tapping the ball to himself. And these guys are forearm, elbows, body, rebound, put back. And he doesn't even blink. It's like they weren't even there. But his body's taking a beating. And to me, that shaped a little bit more of my thinking around him and how good he was. Tremendous passer. Can shoot it a little bit. You know, not 3-point range, but can step out to 18 and make you pay. Great in the post. Just, he again, undersold at how good he was. And he's on my all-time list of deuces, shall we say. But let's get back to another Shaq partner, Penny Hardaway. Penny Hardaway, tremendous player. Injuries robbed us of something great. But Shaq, if you go back and you YouTube some of Shaq's highlights in Orlando, you'll just be drooling at how athletic and fluid and powerful he was. Most of us just remember the big hulking, Lakers, Miami Heat Shaq that was just so big and so powerful that you couldn't stop. But young Shaq, just boundless energy, crazy power, speed, athleticism. For sure Penny's in number 2 there, and they could have been crazy dominant, but tons of fun to watch. On that same vein, well, maybe more the Stockton Malone, Gary Payton discussion would be, you're going to talk about Yao Ming and Tracy McGrady. Who's the number 2 there? It's probably Yao Ming, even though Tracy had trouble staying healthy. Yao Ming's the number 2 there. He was tremendous, and it just makes me think, what would have happened if Grant Hill and Tracy McGrady would have hooked up? Had they stayed healthy? How great that would have been. And again, who's the number 2 there? So it's very, very confusing. KD and Russ. Russ is the number 2 there. He's great. They had some really good teams. They went deep. Both Hall of Famers. Both phenomenal players. So they're on the list. A lot of honorable mentions here. But let's get to the number 2 all-timer to wrap this up. Is going to be Dwayne Wade to me. He was probably the number 2 to Shaq when they won in Miami. That first ring when they beat Dallas. But that was his coming out party. He was phenomenal. He shot a ton of free throws. The refs were, helping a little bit. He shot a ton of free throws. But that was his coming out party. Shaq was still the main guy on that team, But Dwayne Wade came around. Then Dwayne Wade turned into Batman. And he was the go-to guy until LeBron came. And what separates Dwayne Wade in my mind from a ton of guys is the realization. That first year, I don't think there was a struggle emotionally, like outwardly, between him and LeBron of who was the main guy. But you could see on the floor, they were still figuring it out. Like, oh, I came to your team. Are you the guy? Like, do we go to you in these moments, or me, or how do we run this? And year 2, Dwayne Wade, they had a moment. It was just like, you're the guy. You're it. I'm going to play off you. And it was phenomenal. Dwayne Wade was, he's the 3rd all-time greatest shooting guard. And he played second banana to Shaq and LeBron, 2 of the greatest to ever play. So he's number 2 on my list. Maybe he should be number 1 if you think about it. Amazing player. And it's interesting to how he complemented LeBron without being a really good three-point shooter. In my mind, LeBron at his best, at his most effective, was that Miami team operating at the 4. They'd get him at the extended elbow, and he'd just go to work. He shot like 55%. His true shooting percentage was off the hook. Just do everything. That was, to me, probably my favorite LeBron to watch. Because he just came out like a monster. And physically, he was still so athletic and exploring his athleticism. Some of the things he was doing, he was trying to see, what can I do? So that was phenomenal to watch. So, I don't know. I'm taught now that I work it out, I'm caught. Is Dwayne Wade the best number 2, or is Scotty the best number 2? But hey, you can't go wrong with either one. Let me know if there's something I missed. What do you think? Do you think there's somebody I didn't put on the list that should be on this list? Do I have somebody that's too high? Do you think I'm full of it when I'm talking about Gary Payton and Shawn Kemp? Let me know what you think. So, like if you like, comment if you have something to say, and subscribe at your own risk. We'll see you on the next one.